ever had God give you a gut check? A gut check. You ever had God give you a gut check? Open your eyes to something you were unaware of about yourself. A number of years ago, we were at our home church in Virginia, and a good friend of mine, Ryan, was doing the introduction to worship service, and he said, "Yeah, I want to tell you guys about a friend of mine. He's pretty cool." And he went on to say some other things. I'm like, "Why is he talking about me? Is he going to have me go up on stage for something?" And he was saying a few other things, and he's like, "I just want to tell you about my good friend Jesus." And I realized in that moment that I had actually confused myself with Jesus. That I might have an issue with pride to work on. If you have your Bibles with you, open them to Philippians chapter 2. We'll start at verse 1. It says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion." He's really front-loading this. This is telling you, he's like, if you have any good thing that God has given you, then here's what I want you to do. It says, "Then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind." And we've been talking about Christian unity for the past few weeks. And to wrap this series up, I wanted to focus on the biggest thing that gets in the way of what he's talking about. So we understand, generally, you ask any Christian, hey, should followers of Jesus get along? Yes, absolutely. Should we see more unity and being of one spirit in the church? Yes. Then why don't we see it happening? And he goes on to clarify. "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." So it says, if you want to see this unity expressed in your life and in the life of the church, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. You're going to need humility, valuing others and their interests above your own. I think a lot of times among Christians that pride is something that we don't take seriously enough. But I'll tell you the truth, there aren't many churches that I know of that have been destroyed by drug abuse. That tends to be something that happens outside of the walls of the church. But I can name you quite a few churches that have been torn apart in the work of God, destroyed by pride. Because somebody can walk into service, right? And if they're drunk, we can smell it on them, we can see it in their behavior, and it's easy to identify, right? Somebody walks in the doors of the church, they could be filled to the brim with pride and arrogance, and you wouldn't necessarily realize it about them. In fact, if you ask the world around us, I think culture pride is something that we celebrate. Something that we reward in other people and maybe even expect to see in them. Try and convince somebody who isn't a Christian that humility is something that they need more of in their life. Now, pride is most obvious. When I mention somebody who's arrogant, you might think of somebody who has a tendency to brag about themselves. And that's the easiest thing to recognize. There's this Native American tribe, and they had a tradition, they called it potlatch. And if you thought you were something, you would throw a party at your house and you invite everybody, to your place, and you'd feed them a feast, and that's fairly typical. And you would give away gifts, expensive ones, and you'd keep a list of everything you're giving away. And then if you really thought you were something, you would gather together all of this stuff into a building and you would burn it down. And you'd have a list of all the stuff that you just burnt down, and everybody'd sit there and watch your stuff burn and be like, "Wow, that's really something. You must be really rich to be able to burn down all of your stuff." Now, if I lived in that tribe, I probably would have gone around to those people and like, "Hey, what's really impressive? If you give me the stuff." Because, you can even have a competition. Who can give me the most stuff? And I'll say, "Oh, you're the big Indian." Yes, until the next person comes along. And we laugh at that, right? We think, oh, that's so silly. How are we any different, though? In our luxury brands that basically exist to make a statement that you can afford to drop crazy amounts of money on something just for a label on it. Pretty early on in the App Store, there's an app that was for your phone that cost $10,000. It didn't really do anything other than cost $10,000. So you could put it on your phone and show it to people and say, you see how much money I have, that I can just throw away money on some app for my phone. We recognize bragging pretty easily. Proverbs 27 verse 2 says this, let someone else praise you. Because that's what pride does, doesn't it? You want recognition from other people. You want other people to say how great you are. So let someone else praise you and not your own mouth. An outsider and not your own lips. I remember looking at a website, somebody was asking me about this guy heading into town. And he proudly proclaimed that he was an internationally known Bible teacher. You know, right there on his website, this whole thing on his biography and how great he was. And come to find out, the truth was, when he said, I'm internationally known, he meant that he went on a mission trip this one time and taught in like two different countries in Europe at like a Bible study. And then proclaimed himself on his way, I'm internationally known. Let somebody else say stuff about you. In the early days of the American Republic, if you wanted to run for the office of president, they considered it too proud to put yourself forward. Nobody did that. They said, no, it'd be arrogant for you to go and say, hey, I think you all need to let me run things. Instead, the custom was that you had to say nothing and let somebody else say, you know who I think should run the country? That guy. Do you think things have changed just a little bit in our attitude? Now we think, boasting is pretty easy to recognize. Somebody has a tendency to brag. By the way, the sure sign of pride in yourself is how annoying you find it in other people. What you're aware of that you have inside yourself. Romans 12:13. Because here's what happens in the church. We think, well, if I'm not bragging like the other people, if I'm not pouring champagne into a jacuzzi and posting it on Instagram, I don't have an issue with pride. Romans 12:3 says this, for by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. So it's not just like the words that we say or the stuff that we buy or burning stuff down in the building just to show off. He said it's the way that you think about yourself. And that is the dangerous form of pride. The pride that slips in unnoticed, and we begin to think of myself as just a little bit better than the people around me in whatever way that it is. Now notice that the solution here, he says, is not, don't think of yourself more highly, think terrible things about yourself. The Bible doesn't set out to tell you you should think of yourself as an awful person, or to tell yourself that you don't have skills that you do have. It says think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with faith. We'll get to what that looks like in a minute. But here's a few kinds of pride that I see among Christians, and one of those is the pride that comes with a little bit of knowledge. People who've been in the church for a while. Pastor comes in and they say, well, Pastor, you're not really going to tell me anything I don't know. 1 Corinthians, he's writing to a church. They have a lot of issues with division. Pride was at the center of it. And they had this thing they were arguing about over food sacrificed to idols and whether they could eat it or not. And he writes to them, he says, now about food sacrificed to idols, we know that we all possess knowledge. But knowledge puffs up, while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know. But whoever loves God is known by God. And what was happening is you had this issue they were talking about in the church, and you had some people who set themselves up as the authority. He said, well, you don't really know about God like I do. And he said, you know what? The second you begin believing that about yourself, you really don't know anything at all. If you want to know anything about God, you have to begin from a position of humility. Otherwise, you'll be unteachable. You know who the hardest people to teach in a college setting are? Adults that return to college. You've been in the classes with them. I see April shaking her head. You've been in the classes, and here's what happens. I sat there, and there's like the one old guy, and I'm saying old, now I'm that age. There's the one old guy in the back of the class, and he's sitting there arguing with the teacher because he thinks he already knows it. And that's what pride does. When you think you have a little bit of knowledge, it puffs you up. Now, it's not saying that the answer is to be ignorant. The answer is to combine love with knowledge. Kind of love that builds people up. Because you can have, a tremendous amount of Bible knowledge and really know nothing about God. Now, the kind that you find in the church in the book of Galatians, Paul writes to people who were proud of their own goodness. So in Galatians chapter 6, he's writing to them about helping other people who are struggling, carrying each other's burdens. But he says, be careful. In verse 3, he says, if anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Go and ask people who don't believe in God what they think about Christians. Very many will tell you one of the defining characteristics that they pick up on their friends who go to church is a sense that I am better than you. Holier than thou. I was that kind of kid. I was raised in the church, and I'd been in Sunday school and I felt I understood like all the stories. And I was self-righteous. I remember when I caught someone I didn't like looking at porn, and I loved calling them out for it. Hounded them off the bus. You know that's wrong. Look at you. How bad are you? What are you doing? Because it made me feel better about who I was. I thought I was something. I'm better than you. How could you fall into that? Isn't that sometimes what we do with people who are struggling? And he says you have to be careful when you have people around you who are struggling. And it's not to say that, I'm the same as a meth dealer. But if I'm dealing one, I need to watch myself. That I don't begin to think that God loves me because of my life and the things that I do. God will humble me. Everybody comes to God through grace. You begin to view yourselves as one of the good ones, one of the righteous, a crusader for good, outstanding member of the community, pinning medals on yourself of your own creation. Maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, like, Pastor, this is a great sermon for other people. This is a great sermon. I don't deal with pride like other people do. Really. Say, if you're having that thought, that is a good indication that this is a message you need to hear. You're prideful. Proverbs 13:10. The result of pride: strife, fighting, arguments. Where there is strife, there is pride. But wisdom is found in those who take advice. Because here's what proud people do. Proud people don't just want to be rich or skilled or clever or famous. They want to be richer than the next guy. Stronger than the next guy. The bigger truck than the next guy. And that's where you have arguments break out. You ever find yourself in a room with other people realizing it's just not big enough for all the egos present there? When you have people who are proud, there's always fighting. There were a group of 3 guys in Sweden. They got into an argument about which of them was the manliest man of them all. Ever heard one of those? And you know how the argument ended when one of them grabbed a chainsaw and cut his own head off. I have to assume at this point in the argument, the other 2 guys conceded that he was the winner. But that's what pride does. It leads to strife. Because if you're proud, you can't acknowledge the possibility of somebody being better than you. It eats away at you. I remember as a student, I was incredibly, like I said, just filled with pride. And I thought I was the boy wonder. You know, I was smarter than everybody else. And I met a kid smarter than me. Oh, and he was like just a few months younger than me, and he had just a few points higher in his essay. I wanted to fight him, like, you know, throw down in the essay writing contest or something. I mean, and that's what pride does. Have you ever, and even when there is fighting, right, pride makes it hard to stop fighting. Have you ever hit a point in an argument, husbands and wives especially, where you know you're wrong? You know you're wrong, but you don't want to admit it to the other person. You know you're wrong. And pride, it's just like this wall you can't get through. And you're like, yeah. And you might go back like later, right? And acknowledge like, yeah, you're totally right about that. Sarah's giving me the eyebrows. And in the book of James, you know, again, he writes them. He says, look, this is why you guys are having so many fights and stuff. You're proud. He writes this in James 4:6. But he gives us more grace. That is why Scripture says, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. That should give us serious pause to realize that God actively works against people who are filled with pride. So if you can imagine a church that is filled with prideful people, man, if you want to say anything about your church, the idea of God actively working against you rather than doing the work in the church, we need to examine ourselves. God opposes the proud. You know, I believe a lot of it is for our own good. I was a prideful person. God humiliated me in more ways than I can count. He challenged me on every pillar of pride. He challenged me on my righteousness. When I fell into porn addiction, was bound up in that for years until he gave me freedom. And I realized that it was by grace and not because of my own righteousness that God loves people. When he allowed me to fail out of college and showed me that I thought I was better than everyone else, he broke me in my pride. Would you like me to pray for you this morning that God would wreck your plans when they're built on pride? Do an altar call for that, yeah. People come forward. I just like, God just destroy my life if it's built on things other than you. I would like to pray that for you this morning. It's my prayer for myself. I can't tell you how many times I've told God, like, God, you know how stubborn I am when I don't listen to you. I would rather have God teach me humility the hard way than continue on in pride in my way. Opposing the proud for their own benefit. However, of course, it shows favor to the humble. Please hear me. It's far easier, right? Go about this the easy way. Develop a spirit of humility, and you will not be taught those hard lessons. You want God to show favor in your life? Begin by being humble. So Philippians 2. Make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, so here's the alternative, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. That is not easy. Again, when we think about the values in the world and the culture around us, the idea of valuing other people before yourself is a foreign concept. Maybe you've been at work and there's that sense of, I'm in it for me. See people get thrown under the bus in the advancement of my own career. Let me tell you, again, in the church, here's the application. Church people, do not assume that your own preferences in the church are what should always happen. That sometimes the valuing other people over yourself and their interests above your own means that even though you would prefer something to go differently, you realize that it is better for other people and you're willing to set aside your own preferences. Like I mentioned before, in terms of like taste in music, I listen to some really weird stuff. And like, if I believed that the church was here to cater to my own weird taste in music, you would probably have like people get up and like leave, during worship. I don't even know what that would look like. But I mean, I'm not like going to go around like church shopping, right, until I find a church that only plays exactly the songs that I want played like all the time. The same thing, in preaching. When I entered Bible college, I hit a point, and maybe you've hit this point in your own walk, where in terms of knowledge, I realized that as a brand new Christian at age 20, like everything was new and exciting, and like every Sunday I was going there like, I've never heard this before. Wow. And then I hit a point as I began to study, where I was no longer really hearing new information that I'd never heard before as the pastor was preaching. And again, if I was, self-interested, maybe I could go to him and demand that you need to teach on like obscure Greek verbs. Because I've read that verse before. But again, can you imagine somebody who's never heard the gospel before coming into church that just dives into these obscure tangents and not touching on the things that would benefit the new believer as well? So we set aside our own interests for the interests of others. I don't think that any of those kids that came out there and chipped tile, pulled out soggy insulation, were doing it for the health benefit. I was, a little bit, cardio. But this is how the body of Christ works. And it doesn't work if everybody's in it for them. Do everything with humility. Now, again, when we think about the way our world looks at things, humility is often confused with weakness. Right? We expect people who are successful and powerful to talk about their own success, their own popularity, or whatever it is. And so we think that if somebody is not out there promoting themselves relentlessly like everybody else is doing, it's because they're weak. We see this especially in athletes, and we kind of admire that. A guy like Chad Ochocinco, he's retired, and I loved watching the guy play and hearing to him talk afterward. He said, like, there are three constants: death, taxes, and the fact that I'll always be open. As a wide receiver, we expect them to be that arrogant. And let me tell you, as a Cowboys fan, I was so happy not to see only how Dak Prescott played, this new quarterback, right, rookie, first year in the league, and he gets to step into the position. The normal guy gets injured, and we expect everybody to go, I need this, I'm the best guy, I should have the position. And he says in interview after interview, here's a quote, this is Tony's team, I'm just trying to do the best I can to give my team a chance to win week in, and week out. And it was so bizarre. People were saying, why isn't he like taking a hold of this for himself? Now Dak Prescott is not Jesus. Cowboys fans, we need to remind ourselves of this. And so Paul, as he talks about humility, he sets an example for them. Very next verse. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. So as we all struggle with our pride, and we say, God, there are times I get a little bit stuck up, there are times that I've struggled with this, he says, here's the example that you need to be looking to. And then he gives basically a hymn here. Who being in very nature God. So Jesus was not weak, he didn't lack power and authority. Jesus being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. As if you consider how incredible it is that in a world filled with people trying to get all of the praise and the recognition and using everything to our own advantage and our own promotion, that Jesus came and he didn't deny who he was. He didn't try and tell people that he wasn't something that he was. But he didn't come like pointing to the sunset every morning to the disciples and saying, did you like that this morning? I made it. He was willing to come as an infant in a poor family, in a poor country. And he lived a life as one of us. And he was obedient even to death on a cross. And the crucifixion for the Romans was as much about humiliation as it was about pain. They would lead them in a procession through the town so that everybody could come out and watch. It was usually people who rebelled against the Roman Empire. Everybody could come out and tell them how much they hated them. They'd throw stuff at them. They would be publicly shamed. And that is why they were stripped of their clothing. The entire thing was built up in shame. And the idea that at the very same time that I have been bound up and thinking myself as better than others and trying to promote myself, that God himself would be willing to endure that humiliation for my pride. Can you think about that? God himself enduring that humiliation, having the ability to stop it at any point, enduring that for me. That's our example. If Jesus was willing to endure that on my behalf, to make me clean, what excuse do I have for getting stuck up about my life? Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow. Can you imagine that? People their entire lives. Maybe people who've had other people bow before them. On that last day, there will be no one standing. Proud hearts will be humbled one way or another. The decision is yours as to the timing of this event. Will you bow your knee today before him and say, God, I am not too good for this? You know, pride keeps people from God. They say, well, I'm a good enough person on my own. I don't need to go into church because I know other people, they got real issues. I don't. I'm a good enough person. You decide when you bow the knee. Will it be now, here in this life, accepting him as Lord and the forgiveness that he offers? Or will it be on the final day when it's too late, your knee will bow anyways. Every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. And again, the people who have spent their lives cursing God, who on that day, as they see him face to face, will have no choice but to acknowledge who he is. The choice is yours if you want to acknowledge that before that point. I'm so very happy as we leave here in the service and do some baptisms that they will be confessing with their mouth that Jesus is Lord. I've encouraged them both to be bending the knee in their lives, not just in a physical act, but the way that you live. Allow God to be God. Stop trying to take his job. Live in humility. Let's pray. God, I pray that you would give us that sober judgment as we evaluate ourselves. Really, God, that you would turn our focus away from ourselves and onto you. That as we serve a God who is willing to step into public humiliation on our behalf, you give us that same mindset as we deal with other people. God, that you would show us those areas and those times where we have become vain and conceited, prideful. That you would give us humility the easy way. Your Spirit working in